It's your host, Kevin Oldham, with another episode of Franchise My Business, a podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. I, every once in a while, come across a book that deeply impacts me. And when I do that, I almost feel like it's a moral responsibility to share that book or the teachings, the takeaways of that book with others. And The Gap and the Gain by Dan Sullivan is absolutely one of those books. It is such a transformational book, not only for me as a business leader, but also as a father, as a husband, as a community member. And so I want to just dive real quickly into why this book matters, particularly for franchisors or any entrepreneur. So when it comes to measuring our performance, you know, the head stuff that happens, the head trash, right? A lot of times, and particularly with social media and all of these other hyper-connected ways that we can see what other people are doing, it's pretty easy to feel like you're not doing or you're not living up to your own expectations. Let's put it that way. Or maybe you're living up to your own expectations in terms of output, but you're not getting the results that maybe your peers are getting. Okay. So one way of evaluating yourself is to kind of compare yourself to this arbitrary place that you feel like you want to go and maybe where others already are. Okay. So the future. And we all have this vision, I think, of, hey, everything's going to be awesome, or I will have arrived when fill in the blank happens. Right. The funny thing is, you know, when we do that, particularly as entrepreneurs, is, you know, because I've achieved those goals, and the change just keep getting moved out further and further, because as driven individuals, we're never excited about where we are now. We're always like, hey, what could be in the future, right? And that's actually kind of a dangerous place to hang out all the time, because if you're evaluating your performance and you're having conversations with yourself inside your head about, hey, maybe I'm not at this revenue goal or this, you know, location goal or whatever it is, you can start to feel down about yourself. You can start to feel down about your progress or your perceived lack of progress. Okay. So that's one way to evaluate your performance. And we will call that living in the gap between what you have now and what you aspire to have in the future. Okay. So what I don't have today, that is the gap. Okay. So let's talk about the gain. Let's talk about a more healthy, mentally healthy way to evaluate yourself against, you know, yourself, right? Look at your past performance. Look at how far you have come. I guarantee if you were to pull open your calendar, if you're like me, you live off of your calendar. So go pop into the calendar on whatever day you're reading or listening to this podcast. Look at your calendar. Look at what meetings you had that day. It'll start to stir up conversations around what was happening 365 days ago. Or you can do the same exercise 5 years ago. When you do that, you're going to take a look at the gain, how far you've come from that previous point to today. Okay. And chances are you're going to be blown away by the amount of progress you've made on whatever it is that you're working on. So if it's a franchise, you know, maybe you didn't put as many locations out there as you'd hope, but maybe you did some foundational things that made it so that you could grow, right? And so I use this from a parenting perspective as well. My wife and I use it, and I'll show you how you can use this personally, because life's not all just about business, right? Like life's a blend. So we have younger children, 8 and 11, and sometimes our kids will, you know, be sad that they don't have fill in the blank that their friends have or whatever. And I'll be like, hey guys, you're living in the gap. Like, think about what all you do have, right? Maybe you don't have that brand new bike that your friend has, but you have a bike that you bought with your own. Actually, my son has a micro business. He picks up dog poop. So your dog poop pickup, your dog poop pickup business. Think about that bike that you bought with that hard-earned money, right? And it's a really kind of easy way to get conversations recalibrated. So, you know, if you're an entrepreneur, you probably have entrepreneur friends, and sometimes we have down days, and it's your opportunity to lift them up. If it's your franchisees, you have the opportunity to lift them up. Maybe they're not happy with, their execution on the roadmap that you've put together as the franchise builder, that's okay. You can go back and mentor them and be like, hey, everybody moves at their own pace, but look at all the gains that you've had. So The Gap and the Gain is a really, really good book to kind of get your mind centered. If you ever have that negative self-talk and it's related to your performance or what you don't have that you hope that you have or that you thought you'd have by this point in time, The Gap and the Gain is a really, really good tool to have in your mental toolbox to say, hey, hold on. Am I living in the gap, or am I appreciative of the awesome things that I have done to this point? Right? So be well, my friends. I challenge you to live in the gain, because the gap is an energy sucking vampire. It needs to go away as much as possible, and it takes practice. But think about the gap and the gain. If you have negative thoughts, be like, hey, am I living in the gap? And if so, how can I live in the gain? Recalibrate and be super thankful for all the work that you've done. 2 asks. Number 1, if this episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with one person. Number 2, if you like my show, I would love for you to smash the subscribe button. It would mean the absolute world to me. Until next time, I hope and trust that you're well, and be awesome.